everyone, my name is Allie and this is going to be a 45-minute yoga fit class. We can go ahead and get started in a seated position on our mat. And from here we're going to begin by focusing on our breathing, slowly closing our eyes, lifting our shoulders, feeling our nice neutral spine, beginning to take nice deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Beginning to find our focus for today's class. And as we continue to find our breath, this is a really good time for us to begin focusing on our intention for today's class. Your intention could be either a goal that you wish to accomplish, or maybe a mantra that you want to keep in the back of your mind as we go ahead with our practice today. And as we continue to still find our regular breath, we can begin to move on to finding our Yogi Breath. These are just deeper breaths that we take in through the nose and out through the nose as well. To help find your Yogi Breath, you can place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Keeping your eyes closed, you can breathe in very deeply through the nose, feeling your chest rise as the belly drops, and exhaling through the nose, feeling the belly rise as the chest drops. And as we continue to find our Yogi Breath and come in tune with our breath overall, you can feel free to maybe add some shoulder movements, bringing your shoulders up towards the ear, bringing your shoulder blades together, and dropping them back down in a nice circular motion, beginning to warm up the body. You can also feel free to switch directions, bringing the shoulders up towards the ear, bringing them in towards the chest and dropping them back down. You may also feel free to maybe take your nose and draw tiny little circles in the air, beginning to get some movement into the neck. You can take one ear and drop it towards your shoulder, coming back up and dropping the other ear towards the opposite shoulder. Really just adding any small movements that might feel good for you here. You can also feel free to maybe tuck the chin in towards the chest. And then lifting the chin up towards the sky, dropping your head back, and feeling a nice stretch through the front of your neck. You can continue to take any small movements here as we continue to warm up the body. And on your next breath, we can begin to flutter our eyes back open. And we can take one nice big breath, taking our arms out towards the side, lifting them up above our head, taking a nice deep inhale, dropping down to one side of our mat, bringing our palm down and our opposite arm up and over our head, feeling a nice stretch through the obliques. Holding here for one breath, inhaling back up towards the sky and exhaling down, dropping the arm as well to the mat, bringing our arm up above our opposite head. And we can come back, inhaling up, taking this at our own pace, dropping down, making sure we exhale on our way down. You can also feel free to drop the elbow down to the mat for a deeper stretch. And if you'd like a bit of a challenge, you can feel free to drop onto that elbow and really engage the core on the way up, using your core muscles and not pushing up through the hand. We can take a few more rounds of breath here. And on our next inhale, we'll come up, bring our arms to heart center, and rotate onto our mat. Bring our palms in front and our knees underneath our hips. We'll move into a nice tabletop position, bringing our big toes together, sinking our hips back and dropping our forehead to the mat. We'll move into child's pose, taking a few rounds of breath here. And on our next exhale, we'll pop our heads up, bringing our hips up towards the sky, and we'll move into some cat-cows. And for that, we want to make sure that our shoulders are stacked over our wrists and our hips are stacked over our knees. And we'll begin to take a nice deep inhale, dropping our belly down, shifting our gaze up towards the sky, and feeling a nice stretch through the lower back, holding for a breath. And we'll exhale, rounding out our spine, shifting our gaze towards the tops of our thighs for cat. Once again, holding for a breath. And then we can come into that neutral position. Inhaling up for cow. Once again, shifting our gaze up, dropping that belly down. And we can exhale, rounding out the spine once more, shifting our gaze towards our thighs for cat. And we can begin to take this at our own pace, making sure that we inhale for cow and exhale for cat. We can move through this a few times on our own. We can take one more of either pose here. And on our next breath, we want to come back into that neutral tabletop position. And we'll move into a spinal twist, taking one of our arms, lifting it up above our head, taking a nice big inhale, keeping our gaze right over our fingertips. And we'll exhale, dropping that arm down, bringing the shoulder to the mat, as well as our forehead. Holding first one breath here. Feeling a nice deep stretch through our shoulders. On our next breath, we'll come back up and rotate on the other side, taking a nice big inhale as we bring our arm up and our gaze over our fingertips. Exhaling down, dropping our shoulder and our chin down towards the mat. And we can begin to take this at our own pace, making sure we inhale nice and big on our way up, and exhaling as we drop our arm down towards the mat and bring our forehead down. You can go ahead and take one more on either side. And then we'll meet back in this neutral tabletop position and sink back down into child's pose, bringing our big toes together and bringing our forehead down towards the mat. mat, feeling a nice deep stretch through the opposite arm, and then returning to neutral when you like. And then from here, we'll come into the nice neutral tabletop position once more. Tucking our toes underneath us, lifting our knees, pedaling out those feet in downward dog once more. We'll move through the warrior two sequence with the high crescent lunge once again on the opposite leg, coming into a three-legged dog, making sure that our leg is parallel to the mat, tucking our knee in towards our chest. We'll place the sole of our foot in between our palms, feeling free to once again drop that back knee if you'd like, or keeping it raised. We'll begin to find our balance in both of our feet, lifting our arms, coming up through, lifting our chest, hinging at the hips, making sure that that back knee is nice and bent, as well as the front knee, making sure our hips are squared to the top of our mat, and that we can still see our big toe underneath our front knee. We'll keep our arms up and over our head and our eyes forward, holding for a couple of rounds of breath here. And on our next breath, we can begin to come into the warrior two position. We'll begin to turn our back foot 90 degrees, bringing our front arms down, keeping our palms to the bottom of our mat. We want to make sure that our hips are once again squared to the side of our mat, and that our chest is nice and lifted and our gaze is over our front fingertips. We can hinge at the hips just a little bit more, feeling a stretch through the hip. Holding for a breath here. We'll move through the reverse warrior sequence once again, placing our arm either on the small of our back or on the back of our thigh, flipping our front palm up towards the sky, bringing it up and over our head, holding for a breath here. Exhaling into the neutral tabletop position, and then inhaling down, coming into side angle, placing our front arm on our thigh and bringing our arm up and over our head. And while we're here, we want to make sure that we're not collapsing in over our arm or buckling in our hips. We want to make sure that our chest is nice and lifted still, and that you can see the floor with your chest. And then taking a nice breath in and inhaling up into reverse warrior. We can feel free to flow through this at our own pace. We'll take two more on either side. And then from here, we can bring our arms back into that nice neutral position. Bringing our arms to the mat, we want to hinge at the hips. Exhaling down, coming into downward dog once more, pedaling out those feet. We'll move into that neutral position once more, dropping our knees down, coming into child's pose, giving our legs a nice break. Bringing our forehead to the mat. This is a good time to think about your intention that you set at today's class and reflect on it, and just keep it, bringing it to the front of your mind once more as we're about halfway through class. And then on our next breath, we'll begin to raise our head up, pushing through our knees. We want to tuck our toes underneath us, lifting those knees, coming into downward dog once more. We'll pedal out those feet and to begin to slowly walk them up towards our palms once more, coming into forward fold. And then from here, we want to begin to slowly inhale and begin to slowly roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, making sure that our chest and head are the last to lift. And from here, we'll move into our balance portion of today's class with our peak pose being chair pose. So we want to come into a nice mountain pose, making sure that our weight is evenly distributed through our feet. We'll begin to bring our arms out towards the side, taking a nice big inhale up. Bring our arms up and over our head. We'll sink back through the hips, making sure that once again our weight is evenly distributed through both of our feet. We'll bring our palms to heart center. And there's a few variations that you can take with this pose. You can feel free to rotate your elbow onto the opposite knee and shifting your gaze up, holding here. If that doesn't feel comfortable, you can just hold in chair pose, or you can also feel free to rotate as far as it feels good for you. And from here, you just want to make sure that your chest is staying lifted. We're not collapsing over onto our knees. We just want to hold for a few breaths. And then on our next breath, we'll begin to rotate back into center, hinging at the hips, bringing our chest up, bringing our arms out to the side for mountain pose once more. We'll swing our arms out towards the side, bend at the knees, coming up for one big inhale. And then we'll exhale, coming back down into a forward fold. Holding for 2 breaths. And then we'll begin to come back into downward dog, bringing our feet out towards the back and our head in between our arms. We'll drop onto our knees one last time, coming into child's pose. Bring our forehead down to the mat once more. And then on our next inhale, we'll lift that head and chest. Tuck our toes underneath us, lift our knees, sink our hips back, coming into downward dog. And then we'll walk our feet slowly up towards our palms once again. And we'll come into forward fold, making sure that our knees are bent. And then we will take a nice big inhale and slowly roll our body up vertebrae by vertebrae, making sure once again that our chest and our head are the last to lift. From here, we'll go back into mountain pose and take the variation of chair pose on the opposite side, making sure that our weight is evenly distributed through our feet. We'll bring our arms out towards the side with a nice big inhale, bringing our hands to heart center. We'll begin to sink those hips back and feeling free to either rotate our forearm onto the opposite side of our knee, shifting our gaze forward. And once again, feeling free to take any of the variations of just holding in chair pose or twisting as far as you can, making sure that your chest is always lifted and you're not collapsing over at the hips. We'll hold for 3 rounds of breath. And on our next breath, we'll begin to rotate back into that nice neutral position. Begin to hinge at the hips, straighten the legs, bring our arms out towards the side. We'll sweep our arms out, take a nice big inhale, and then come into a nice forward fold once more, hinging at the hips. Coming into forward fold, we'll come back into downward dog, pedaling out those feet, and we'll begin to move into our cool down for today's class. We'll move back into 3-legged dog, making sure that we keep our leg parallel to our mat. We'll bring that knee in towards the chest, place the sole of our foot in between our palms, drop that back knee, untuck the toes, and keep the chest and gaze lifted. We'll hold and pigeon for a few rounds of breath, feeling a nice stretch through the hips. And then our next breath, we'll begin to walk that front foot over to the opposite hand, dropping that knee down. Feeling a good stretch through the glutes, we'll come onto our elbows if that feels best for you. You can feel free to maybe place your head in your hands and give your forehead a little massage with your thumbs. And on our next breath, we'll press through our palms once more, tuck our back foot underneath us, lift, bringing our front foot to the back. We'll go through that same sequence on the opposite side, so coming into 3-legged dog, tucking our knee in towards our chest, bringing the sole of our foot down in between our palms, tucking our back foot underneath us, making sure that our gaze is lifted as well as the chest, feeling a deep stretch through the back hip. On our next breath, we'll begin to walk that front foot over towards the opposite arm, dropping that front knee down, coming onto our elbows if that feels best. And then once again, placing our forehead in our thumbs. On our thumbs, we will begin to, you can give yourself a little head massage if that feels best. And on our next breath, we'll begin to press through our palms once more, tuck our back toe underneath us, lift our hips, and send that front foot to the back. We'll come into that nice neutral tabletop position, dropping those knees down, and we'll swing our feet out towards one side of our mat. Coming into a nice seated position, we can bring our legs out in front of us once more, and then we can begin to slowly lower ourselves down onto our mat. Taking nice deep breaths here. And then from here we can lift our knees towards our chest, coming in, giving yourself a nice little knee hug, giving your legs a break. We can feel free to rock from side to side, add some small movements here. And then from here we can also feel free to widen the hips, bring our knees out towards the side and move into happy baby by either hooking our index finger around our big toe or placing our hands on the sole of our foot. If this doesn't feel good, because it is a big hip widener, you can feel free to just stay in the knee hug, rocking from side to side. And on our next breath, we can begin to lower one of our legs down towards our mat. Bring our arms out towards the side, feeling free to rotate, bringing that one leg down towards the opposite arm and shifting our gaze up and over our other arm, feeling a nice deep stretch through the spine. We can rotate back over and dropping that front leg down. We'll do the same movement on the opposite side. Bringing our arms out towards the side, we'll rotate over, shifting our gaze for one deep stretch through the lower spine. We'll hold for a breath, and then we'll rotate back into the nice neutral position, lowering that knee back down towards the bottom of our mat. We'll move into our final relaxation pose for today's class. Feeling free to either keep your arms on your chest, at your side, you can keep your knees in a nice bent position or out in front of you. We'll begin to slowly close our eyes once more, beginning to take note of any tension that we're holding, making sure that our jaw is unclenched, our brows are unfurrowed, making sure we're not holding any tension in our shoulders and that our fingers are nice and relaxed. We want to make sure that we're not holding any tension in our glutes or our thighs. And we want to feel like our ankles and toes are sinking into the mat. We can begin to find our yogi breath once more like we did at the beginning of class, coming in tune with your body once more. On our next breath, we can begin to wake our body up once more by wiggling our fingers and wiggling our toes, beginning to add some movement back into the body. When you feel ready, you can begin to flutter your eyes back open. And on our next breath, we can begin to rotate onto one side of our mat, making sure that we come into a nice side position, feeling free to rest our head on our bicep. And this is a really good time to just think about your intention one final time for today's class. And just thank your body and your mind for taking time out of your busy day and focusing on yourself and doing something that's not only really good for your body, but also your mind. We can take one more breath here. And on our next breath, we can begin to press through our palms and rising into a nice seated position. And from here, we can go ahead and take one final breath together as a class. Bringing our arms out towards the side, inhaling nice and big, bringing our arms up and over our head, and inhaling nice and deep. We can begin to place our hands at heart center, slowly lowering down. Namaste means the light and love in me, honors and respects the light and love in you. Namaste. Thank you guys so much for coming to practice today with me. My name is Allie, and this has been Yoga Fitness for 45 minutes, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and thank you so much for joining me.